Hey everyone, welcome back to session number 7 of the ACP-620 study sessions. I'm flying solo today, at least until if and when Ronnie wakes up. Hopefully he wakes up this morning and joins us, but if not, we're going to continue and hopefully we stay on track then, because these next couple of sessions, they look like they're going to be a little long, and maybe the banter might help us actually, or lack of banter might help us stay focused. So in the chat, just welcome and say hello. I love having everybody in here. So if you're joining us, tuning in for this ACP study session today, make sure you say hello in the chat, and just love to welcome you in. We are going to get started with configuring workflow and notifications in Jira projects. Again, and just to kind of give you a recap, we are studying for the ACP-620. We are in the learning paths that Atlassian gives to us, and these are recommended that you take. I don't know how exactly they align with the study material, but they're part of the overall package that Atlassian gives you for free when you're trying to study for the ACP-620. So we've already finished configure work items and fields. That was Tuesday's session. Today, we're going to jump into configuring workflow and notifications in Jira projects. So this is a 15-minute session. We're going to start with the first one, which is what are workflows in Jira? All right, we got Victoria. Hey, Victoria. And we also have Jody. Yeah, I think it's Jody. And we have Susan. Hello, New Mexico. I love that folks are coming in, and we have a few people already. All right, I am pinging Rodney to see where he's at. He's ditching me, leaving me behind, but we'll manage. We'll get through it without Rodney. Okay, so what are workflows in Jira? And so by the end of the session, you'll be able to describe common workflows, differentiate workflows in Jira products, and differentiate between company and team managed workflows, which there's some differences, not a lot. Company managed ones are way more powerful, but the look and feel is going to be pretty much the same. You just have a little bit more power in company managed projects. Fernando, welcome from Chile. Welcome. All right, so what are workflows? So all Jira projects contain work items that your team can view, work on, and transition through stages from creation to completion. My buddy Sean calls it cradle to grave. And so the path that your work items take is called the workflow. So I like to think of this as a process, right? What are the steps when a bug is created, when you're working on a story? What are the steps that your team takes to go from that idea that just came in all the way to what we call done, right? And so all those intermediate steps from beginning to end, that's what Jira defines as the workflow. And we want to make sure that we have good workflows, because one of the bigger configurable things that you do in Jira, once you figure out, okay, what are my issue types, right, is what paths, what processes should be reflected on those issue types or work items. And so this is a really big discussion that you should be having with your stakeholders, right? Because once you figure out, are we doing Agile, are we doing Scrum, the next natural conversation is, well, what kind of work do you want to track? Do we need bugs? Do we need the story and the task? Do we just want one? Do we just want the other? These are all great conversations to have. Are you also missing issue types? Do you need a new work item? Do you need a work item type, right? And so lots of good conversations there. But now once you've settled, once that's kind of been negotiated and you figured it out, the next logical step in your brainstorm here is, okay, now what path should the team take? And so that's what we're going to be focusing on today. So each Jira workflow includes statuses, transitions, and a resolution. Workflows should align with processes within your organization. So here's an example. In case you've been living under a rock, you've never seen a workflow, this is an example workflow. And notice the transitions. There's a line that connects from one status to the other. That's going to be very important. And I'm sure we'll come back to talk to them or talk about them. But for now, let's just proceed. So, well, there they are. See, I knew these aren't scripted, folks. We don't look at this beforehand, so we just roll with the punches here. So, what's a status? So, before I read what Atlassian has, this is the definition I usually give my teams. And so, a status, the way I treat a status is it should be and I'm putting this in big air quotes, folks. This is just my 2 cents, right? A status should be like a noun. It doesn't have to be, but I think too many people confuse the transitions with the statuses. And I like to make a clear distinction between status and transition. And the best way that I like to do this is, again, a status should be a noun, and the transition should be the verb. It's what you do to get there, right? And so the noun is more of the status is more of a destination. You've arrived to something, The verb is what you're gonna do, right? What it's the thing you do. And that's how I treat those transitions. Now you don't have to write the transitions and the statuses can be whatever they mean for you and your work, for you and your team. But I think when you kind of think about it from a noun verb perspective, they tend to click a little bit better. So let me know in the chat if that's any helpful to you all. But that's usually how I describe it. But also in the chat, how do you describe the differences between status and transition? Because it's not always clear cut. And since we're taking a pause here for you all to talk in the chat, I'm just going to remind you all to make sure you hit that subscribe button, right? Because you haven't subscribed to the channel. We're trying to get to 2,000 subscribers. And so we can really use your help. And if you're watching this and you haven't hit that subscribe button, now would be a great time to hit that subscribe button. And you might be seeing Revyz all over the place. Well, there are sponsors. So check out that link down in the description for the Revyz app for Jira. It's basically backups for Jira. So if you ever make a change in your workflow and you're like, uh-oh, I wish I would have had a backup. Well, Revyz has your back and they should be able to back you up and get your Jira back in order. So check out Revyz. All right. So what is a status? So a status represents the state of a work item at a particular point in the workflow. Okay, so again, this is why I call it a noun. It's a place that you are at, right? Like your work, if you think of work as like a fluid, right, as an object that can move, your work lands into a status. Okay, and the work item can only be in one status at any given time. This is key, and each status should be unique. Now, Jira doesn't really have too many rules on this, but just know that if you have too many statuses that are very similarly named, you're gonna run into some problems and some challenges there. Oh, I went down. Okay, statuses must describe what has already happened. Now, this is a must. Jiro's not gonna force you to do this, but it's a good idea. You can use default statuses or create custom statuses. So, for example, you can have open, in progress, reopen, resolved, and closed. These are all statuses that are built into Jira. Now, I'm not a big fan of this default Jira workflow because everybody's always like, well, what's the difference between resolved and closed? Do you really need reopen? Because these are all conversations you need to have with your team. Now, that takes us over to Greg here to see we're actually cleaning up our statuses on our site right now, trying to reduce 1,100 statuses. Wow. Yes, it's a lot of statuses. But yeah, again, keep the ones that make sense. But yeah, if you think of them as nouns, what I think a lot of people do is like reopen. This is why I'm not a big fan of reopen because to me, reopen is a verb. It's a transition. So what I would do is I would take something from like closed and I would make it a transition of reopened back to open. Again, beauty is in the eye of the beholder when it comes to workflow architecture. So keep that in mind. But if you're gonna go and scrub through your statuses, try to identify statuses that describe a verb, something that you're doing that could technically be a transition. I think that's a good way to think about it. Now, with that said, let's go over to transitions. So a transition represents the action being taken to move a work item from status to status. Again, the line that connects these statuses together. Most transitions are one-way links. So if a work item needs to move back and forth, you need two transitions. So this is very key, folks. This is something that we're going to focus in here because a lot of people miss this, especially if you're new to the world of Jira. A lot of people think forward and they have really good workflows that take you forward. That's awesome. That's needed. That's a very critical thing. You need to know how to go from step 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, right? In a linear fashion. However, what a lot of people often miss, and this is especially true because usually what happens, right, is you're trying to you have a new PM, you have a new project manager, and they're like, okay, we want a new project in Jira. You go through well, do you want Scrum? Do you want Kanban, right? You go through those conversations. Then you get to what kind of issue types do you want? You figure that out. And then you get to the workflow conversation, right? You're like, okay, so what do you want the workflow to be for your bug? And so most of the time, what your end user is really good at is giving you the happy path. They will give you step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Awesome. We know what that looks like. Great. But what they don't always give you is the path back, right? It's if something goes wrong, if the happy path is violated in some way, then how do we go back? Well, in Jira, if you don't have an explicit transition to go back, you're not going back. And so you want to be very conscious of this, and cautious for that matter, that if you do not add a transition, you're not going that way. Mr. Rodney, how you doing? and not good enough that his microphone's still not working. So we'll figure out the microphone situation.
Ah, there we go.
What's up, Ronnie? You look good.
Thank you. I just spent 10 minutes dealing with a delivery person and trying to find some cash, so
No Venmo?
not for this one.
You know, it still startles me in 2025. Like I went to San Francisco, and this is gonna sound bad. So please, if you guys are massive tippers, I apologize ahead of time. This might trigger you all, but I go to San Francisco, and I took a shuttle from the airport to the hotel, and everybody's tipping the guy, and I'm like, huh. I don't know when's the last time I've had a dollar bill in my wallet. So I was like, sorry, man. It's not that I don't want to tip you. It's just that I don't have cash. And you should probably advertise your Venmo on the door or something.
Maybe, but they came at exactly the wrong time. I'm like, I can't ignore them. We need these packages, but
They also wanted money. That's also weird. So people are asking you for money
um,
at your door?
cash on delivery for tariffs.
Oh,
But I don't want to get
already?
into that because
No, that's interesting.
yeah, they were shipped before all this, and then been stuck in customs for a bit.
That's fun. See, that's why I just don't buy anything.
Anyways, we're talking about workflows, aren't we?
We are. We just finished describing. Rodney tells me that high fives is greater than tips. I just don't carry cash anymore. Like not having money is a problem.
I
And,
keep
and
some emergency cash in the truck for like if I'm going to a park or going somewhere where I need it or I need to tip something, but I don't keep any in my wallet.
yeah, no, my car would have been in a parking lot in the airport, 400 miles away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, like in Southern California, we just have so much homeless as well. Like I just never have any money. So for me, it's just easier to, like invite them in and buy them food or something because I can just pay it on my card. But just cash is starting to become a little bit of a commodity or something that just doesn't exist as easily anymore.
Yep.
All right. So we're talking about the difference between statuses and transitions, Ronnie, and I basically have given everybody a good definition of status. We were halfway through transition. So I'll just wrap this one up and then I'll pull you back in. So, and I was describing why when you elect to have a workflow with transitions, if you only create a path for your happy path when things go wrong and there is no transition to go back a status, you're not going there's nothing in the world that can make you go back, right? You have to accommodate for forwards and backwards in your workflows. Which the last thing that I'll add to that is if you're not careful, your workflow will end up looking like an etch-a-sketch real quick. And you have to be careful with that, right? Now, certain cases, like a very common case that I see is like a blocked status, right? If somebody goes on a blocked, like puts a blocked status, they'll they'll put like a bunch of lines from every status to go to blocked, and then they have to put lines from every status to go back out to where you came from. That again is a very surefire way to getting yourselves into an etch-a-sketch situation, because that nicely transitions into something that Atlassian calls a global transition. So in this particular scenario, if you have a block status that you want everybody to be able to get to blocked, I love the global transition because it allows you to basically go from any status, you can come into that status. So that solves at least half of our etch-a-sketch problem. However, you will still need to transition out into individual status. So keep that in mind. The takeaway here is that you can use a combination of both global transitions and explicit transitions is what I call them. So just keep that in mind. Curry says, unless you're going on vacation like the beach where they charge you extra 3% to use a card and 0% when you use cash. I intentionally do not go to do you, Ronnie, in Atlanta, do you guys have a Dave's Hot Chicken?
We do not.
So there's a chicken place that's popping up all over Southern California. It's called Dave's Hot Chicken, and they have a spicy chicken that is so spicy they make you sign a waiver before they serve it to
Mm-hmm.
you, right? And I went and I paid with my card, and they force you to tip. Like there is no way that you cannot tip. And so I'm like, but that's not, this tip culture is getting crazy, right? And so I'm like, so I put a penny because I had to put something. Like it would not let you pay if you did not put a tip in their UI. So I'm like, well, you know what? If I ever go to Dave's Hot Chicken, I'm just paying with cash because like this is ridiculous that you cannot complete your transaction unless you put a tip. And so yeah, this is
Yeah, that
definitely
defeats the whole point of a tip.
yeah. So Dave's Hot Chicken, I haven't been to you because of your tipping culture. Shame on you. All right. Let's see. And we got one more thing. The resolution. So resolutions are fun. Resolutions are very, very critical. I think what happens here, folks, if you're multitasking, I want you to stop for 1 second and we're gonna go full screen. Because you know it gets serious when I go full screen on you. So
Yep.
when you use the default out of the box workflows in Jira, specifically the done statuses at the end and the done transitions, if you don't touch that part of a workflow, everything's great and dandy. Jira knows what to do, specifically when it comes to the discussion of resolution. But again, if you're multitasking, you're going to want to listen to me for the next 30 seconds here. This will save you hours and hours and hours and hours of problems and a lot of tears, guaranteed. Okay. And in the chat, if you've ever had this problem, empathize with me and let me know in the chat, right? But what happens is you sometimes create new done statuses, right? Or you have new transitions that go to done or custom transitions that go to done, right? And so what will happen is Jira, for whatever reason, does not recognize that you're going to done, right? And because you have a new transition or you have a new done status, the resolution is not set automatically. And this is a miss because if you, again, modify an existing workflow, an out of the box workflow, and you add like a new to-do status or a new in progress status, then you take it for granted that the done statuses need an extra step. They need to have their resolution set. And you can set the resolution in two ways within your workflow. We'll talk about them in just a second. But I want to drive home the point that if you are making a new workflow or whatever you're doing with at the done area, you have to make sure you take care of the resolution, because if you don't, your issues will move to a done status, but they'll never be resolved. And Jira doesn't like that. Jira will punish you if you don't resolve your issues, because they will never they'll never be crossed out, they'll never be resolved. Your creative versus resolve stops working. And the worst part is when you move an issue to a done status in your board, and that done status is not the last status on your column, then those carry over from sprint to sprint. And so a lot of people, canceled is a really great example, right? A lot of people put canceled in its own column, not in that last final column in Jira. And so they have two columns at the end. They have canceled and done. And so everything that's in canceled, it should be resolved. But because you never added a resolution in your workflow when you transition to canceled, all of that work carries over to the next sprint. And you just have all this baggage. And fixing that problem is a little bit more of a nightmare than it is not. And so you want to be careful.
I will go a step further here. In my workflow designs and what I advocate is you should only have one final status.
Yeah.
And then if you want to explain why it's in that final status,
Yeah, your resolution.
that's when you use resolution as a pop-up.
Yep. And we were having this conversation, Ronnie, so you just missed it. But Greg Williams here has 1,100 statuses that he's cleaning up through right now.
Oh,
and
dear
so,
God, I'm sorry.
So canceled is one of the things that I mentioned to Greg when he was saying this is that a lot of statuses technically should be transitions. But something I should note too is that sometimes I see this less as common, but it is something for you to keep an eye out, that a lot of times, well, again, some of the times, a lot of your statuses technically should be resolutions. So if you have a status of won't do, a status of incomplete, or a status of duplicate, those are resolutions. Those are not statuses. Right? And so again,
Greg just posted an update here, and this is something a lot of people don't realize until they really learn the workflow. I had to take a class to learn this myself, where you could have a pop-up on a transition, set a screen on transition, it will pop up. If you have the resolution on there, you could set it rather than setting it in a post function.
Yep. So yeah, so that's what I was going to say, right? There's two ways to do it. You can do a post function, which is going to set your resolution, or you can do this. What I do not recommend you do, is do both. You should not do the post function, and you should not prompt the user to set the resolution, because if you do the post function and the screen, Jira is going to prompt the user to pick from the list. Awesome. They're going to pick won't do. Awesome. Won't do will be registered, but then the post function kicks in and overrides whatever the user put with whatever you define in the post function. So do not do both. You got to do one or the other. I mean, Jira's not going to complain. Jira will let you do both, but you'll find out that your resolutions are not being set correctly because of that. So food for thought. All right. Oh, and one little fact too that I found out, Ronnie, is that if you do go down the screen with the resolution, at least if you use that default resolution screen that Jira ships with. This is interesting, Ronnie. I don't know if you know this, right? But I, as a safety, if I go down the screen route where I'm going to prompt the user to pick a selection from the list of resolutions and not go the post function route, I, as a safety, put in a validator to make sure that upon that transition, that resolution is set, because you could screw yourself over and essentially not carry a resolution, right? If the user doesn't pick a resolution, then you're back to square one, right? But I found out very recently that Jira, if you go down this route where you use that resolution screen, it pseudo makes it required. It won't let you proceed if none is your resolution. You have to pick a resolution, but it's not a required field, and you don't have to put a validator in your workflow. I thought it was interesting.
It is. Carrie added something here, and I think she has stumbled onto one of the great debates in the Atlassian ecosystem. That is done versus closed.
That should have been a mic question. We need to start fabricating a list of questions that we're going to ask MCB if we ever get a part 2.
Or maybe someone else high up at Atlassian.
Yeah. All right. So that's the resolution. So, it should also be noted that resolutions fields only available in company managed projects. So that's another thing. If you're only using team managed projects, then you're probably going like, what the heck are you all talking about? But if you ever go to a company managed project, it's easy to forget that this is something you got to now accommodate for. All right, so exploring the default workflow. So I avoid these like the plague. I don't know why we have default workflows, because more often than not, your company doesn't run like Atlassian did 25 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so these workflows are almost always, I like my 2 cents, I like to start with a blank slate. I don't like to, because when you have a workflow here, by the way, I don't know if y'all know this, but when you are working on an active workflow, so that is a workflow that is associated to a Jira project, you are not allowed to delete a status. So if you don't like one of the statuses that are in these default workflows, you have to make a copy, and then you have to go through all the motions. So I might as well just start with a clean, brand new workflow. Any thoughts on that, Ronnie?
Yeah. The amount of time I just get into a workflow and just delete everything to start over from a blank slate is ridiculous. Once you've become proficient at developing these workflows, starting from anything else feels like such a task. You really just, let me start over from scratch.
Yeah. Especially since you're going to have to make a copy of it anyways to make it inactive, so you can delete the statuses that you don't want.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, we'll skip over default workflows. Just know that they exist. Know that they come, when you make a new Jira project, they're there. Usually they're simple like this to do in progress and done, but depending on your template, they could get complicated. They could be like this one up here. This is a very popular common default workflow. I think this was actually just called Jira. Yep. Okay. Explore simplified workflow. So this is something I never quite understood, but it's something you should grasp, because as a Jira admin, simplified workflows play a key role, and Jira complains to you if you don't abide by the rules of the simplified workflow. So the simplified workflow is a basic workflow that uses global transitions. Global transitions allow work items to transition from any status to any other status rather than requiring an explicit order. Now, there's some pros and some cons here, folks. So there's some benefits. I love this workflow. This is my favorite type of workflow. It's my favorite type of workflow because it allows me to add statuses really, really easily. It allows me to not have to put so many rules, right? It takes me seconds to create these kinds of workflows. The workflows up here, when you where you have explicit paths, right? These take some time. These take time to architect, to design, to negotiate with your team members, right? You need to know the you need to know the name of the status, but you also need to have the name of the verb of the transition. And so there's a lot of variables that you need to. There's a lot of information you need to create a workflow like this. But with this one, you just need the status name and that's it. Right? We're done. The conversation kind of ends there. So those are some benefits. Some cons, though, there's a couple of cons, and Ronnie, we'll see if our lists compare. But one of my biggest cons, and in the chat, feel free to drop your why you don't or do or don't like these simplified workflows. But one of the cons is, and I know, Ronnie, you have a solution for this already, right? But Jira will give you in the drop down. So when you go look at your Jira and you try to transition the status, Jira will display all the statuses in alphabetical order by color. So that means all your to-dos are at the top, all your in progresses, all the blue ones are in the middle, and all your dones are at the bottom. And they are in alphabetical order by color. And this can confuse people because a lot of folks need that hand-holding. They need to know I'm in progress. I should go to in review. You're giving too much trust to the user. What I see happen a lot is that you create a story, it goes to do, it gets planned to your sprint, yada, 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 it's done. And you're like, well, what happened to the yada, yada, yada?
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people don't like it for that reason.
No, I hate these kind of simplified workflows. They're assuming a lot of discipline and trust in users that, as a full Jira admin, I don't believe ever exists. And you're really going to have to lean on your project admins, which again is the focus of this course, to enforce that discipline within the team if they're going to be able to use this kind of workflow effectively.
Right. So again, your mileage will vary, but Ronnie does know that there is a way for you to set the order of these transitions through a property, is it?
Yeah, a workflow property on the status called, I believe it's called ops bar, specifically. OPS, BAR, all one word.
Ops bar sequence.
Now, this is very advanced workflow configuration. This is something you have to go looking for to set. So a lot of Jira admins don't know about this. And if they do, it's kind of the secret sauce they want to keep to themselves. But workflow properties can do a lot of powerful things that it's just not in the base workflow.
Yep. So if you are going to go down this route of using these types of simplified workflows, just know that that's that this ops bar sequence is an option for you to set the order up. Because there is the
other thing you could consider doing is set conditions on those transitions such that they only appear when certain fields are set appropriately. So someone has at least looked at the issue and done something before his move to done.
Yeah. Now, I am assuming that this is going to be on the test because they're putting in this dedicated section and they gave you a video, but you should know what a simplified workflow is. And I think it's safe to say you should know that every project created using Scrum or Kanban is going to use a simplified workflow. You should know that simplified workflows have no transition screens. They have no conditions, and they just use the global transition. Whereas a custom workflow, these are complex. You put transitions, conditions, you input validations, functions. There's a mix of everything, right? And so know that that's also a possibility. So let's compare workflows in company to team managed projects. So workflows are slightly different in the two. So the biggest takeaway here is that your workflows in a company managed project have to be done by your Jira admin. That's a non-negotiable, at least to a certain degree. There are some workflows. If your workflow is a simplified, well, I guess it no. If your workflow is not shared, this is what I've been told. I haven't confirmed this myself, but if your workflow is not shared with any other projects, because remember the benefit of having a company managed workflow that they can be in schemes and that schemes can be shared, right? But if your workflow is not shared with other projects, then there is now a permission in your Jira project permission scheme that you can open up editing to non-Jira admins. I would personally not recommend it because as you've seen in the last 30 minutes, there's so many different ways to screw this up. And to the untrained person, that's an easy way to yank your hair out of your head if you're the Jira admin, the head Jira admin, because people will make mistakes, especially when they're not trained on how workflows work. So I keep that off.
And several of them, if your head admin is Alex, will get you fired.
Yeah.
Because he will never live that down so long as I have a chance to say something.
Hey, just don't do dumb mistakes. You don't get fired. That's
I
a
thought
simple
you'd have
rule.
more faith in me by now.
Ronnie, you and I, as long as we've been working together, have never actually done Jira together.
I mean, no. Fair. We've been on Jiras together. We just never administered Jiras together.
Yeah, we talk a lot about administration of Jiras together, but we never actually do the Jira together. Although that sounds like a great t-shirt, do the Jira. Okay, so again, biggest difference is in company, you need to be a Jira admin. This is a really good general rule of thumb. Even though there's now workarounds, I would not enable those workarounds. Those are bait. So Jira admins are going to be the ones that are going to set up your workflow. So project admins can only configure how the workflow appears on the board by associating statuses with columns. Project admins can't add or delete statuses or configure transitions or anything. You will need your Jira admin for that. In company managed projects, workflow schemes determine which workflow each issue type uses. Although this is a thing in team managed projects as well, but basically each issue type can have a different workflow. Multiple company managed projects can use the same workflow, which is a company managed only thing. Again, only Jira admins can do that. Company managed projects can use the transition screens in a workflow to require users to enter data. So there's validators and conditions when transitioning. And then you can also use templates to create workflows for request types. You know what's funny? Have you ever, just out of curiosity, Ronnie, because we're on the topic of workflows, in all the years that I've used Jira, and it's been many years, have you ever done, or do you know, does anybody in the chat know? Right, I'm trying to get to a button here. Come on, Jira. Don't make me look bad in front of the wizard. Okay, I gotta go to the workflow scheme. Hold up, folks. I gotta go to the scheme. Here we go. What the hell is this button for?
I do not know. I've played with it once. I didn't really do anything.
Does anybody actually put their workflows on the marketplace? There's some here. Do you have to pay for these? Like what? Why do we have? I've done like 1,000 workflows in my life. Not once have I ever clicked on that get it from the marketplace one.
I clicked on it early, like within the first year of becoming a Jira admin when I was still learning the ins and outs of how this system even works. And I've never found it useful.
You know what would be a great feature at Last if you're listening? Add a workflow from my sandbox, because I've already done the workflow over there. Now I got to recreate it in production, unless you're using something like Revyz backups or Jira, because Revyz doesn't only just do backups, but rather lets you copy configurations from one instance to another. So there's a couple different uses for Revyz. So it's not just backups. It's not just there for when you mess up your workflows, but they're actually there to help you transition or move your entire workflow and all its dependencies over to your production environment. So we'll be making a course on that too to show you what that looks like in the near future. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. But yeah, if you don't use something like Revyz to move your configurations over from sandbox to production, you have to manually recreate your workflows in production. I wish there was a button that says copy from sandbox and or pick it from over there.
Yeah.
Atlassian. Fix it. All right. Well, I'm just glad that I'm not the only one that's like, I'm like, why in the world does this exist? Like, I've never once had any reason to hit that button. Greg says, I think the workflow marketplace is like Atlassian's way of being able to share and migrate. But can you like? That's why I would like to put my sandbox workflows into it and copy them over. But Kari's with us right here. She wishes there was a button to copy from sandbox. Yep. If not, Kari, you got to use Revyz. This is the best way to get your automation rules, your schemes, your fields, everything you have in the sandbox over to production. Make sure you give Revyz a try. It saves you time. I think just if your use case is to literally build stuff in the sandbox, so change management protocols and rules that you have in your company, governance. And so if your policy is do it in the sandbox first and then do it in production, like it seems easy, but a couple of problems come to mind. Ronnie, if you're not careful, you can confuse which Jira you're in. I've had the situation where I thought I was in the sandbox and I thought I was deleting something in the sandbox, but I was actually in production. So what I do when I go to my sandbox is I make it red and I add a banner and I make it all kinds of customizable so that I know I'm not in my regular Jira. Because the only thing that you can learn is that little URL, so tiny, that tells you that you're in the sandbox. And the second thing that you got to consider is that you still have to recreate it. So if you make a complex workflow with a bunch of validation rules and a bunch of conditions, a bunch of post functions, a bunch of statuses, a bunch of transitions, if you have 50, then you got to recreate 50 and you can't forget one. Because if you forget one, your whole workflow is botched. So again, use something like Revyz. It will save you so much headache, so much time, so much money in the long run, because hourly money is money still.
Yeah. Revyz is your best option for the full workflow. There is, and I feel it would be negligent not to mention this, the ability to export a workflow from Jira.
Yep, and that's what Kara
But
is asking.
it does not forget anything. If you have a validator or transition or post function from an app, it will not include those.
Well, let's stay on that topic though, because let's assume this is something. So I've never done this, Ronnie, because I know that you can export a workflow, right? I can go into any workflow here. Let's just get into one. Oh man, I'm in the wrong place. It's like if I'm doing workflows for the first time in my life. Here, let's go here, edit. I'm just gonna grab a workflow. And where the heck's the export button? Hey, here it is. Right? So I can export, but what I've never seen or found is where's the import button?
So go to the workflow overview page that shows all the workflows.
Okay.
Click
Up
the
here?
drop down for add workflow. It should be import right there.
But see, this is why I'm back to that marketplace button, but I've never seen the where's. Okay, so Carrie's telling us we got to go to system over here. Import.
External import. External system import.
Use that for projects, though, not for workflows. Okay, so I'm in the external system import, but where do I pick the workflow? And do I have to be in the old experience? I got a
No, it
JSON.
wouldn't
Am
be
I
the old
importing
experience. No, you're not importing a JSON. Go back.
Oh, you can't. Oh, I guess there's a button. This is the new one. Let's see. See, I'm telling you, I've thought of this. This is something that I've
Maybe
exported
it's
workflows.
one of the Jira at the bottom. I mean, it should be data, project data, but maybe it'll take a workflow.
But again, Ronnie, the fact that you and I spend an unhealthy amount of time in Jira and we don't know how to import a workflow is a problem.
Again, my specialty on the team is DC. I am learning cloud. I am proficient in cloud, but I can tell you exactly where it is on DC.
So you actually have an import button for workflows in DC?
Yes.
I've never. So in the last 3 years, so Kari's telling us that we have to do import XML. Was that over here? No, that was Trello.
No, that
Where's
was
she
not.
at? Under, okay, work. Okay, so we're in import Jira Cloud. Are we doing import Jira Cloud, Kari? Import data? No, that's a backup. I don't know.
Go
See,
to
again,
the external system import. Keep it at the new experience.
there's no XML here. I don't see an XML here. Yes, hang on. Looking. Thought it was there too. See, in just this conversation, Revyz just paid for itself.
True story. You would have been done already if you
You
had used
you
Revyz.
click a couple of buttons in Revyz, and that workflow's in production. It does it for you. So this was totally not scripted. We're not. I mean, obviously, we're very thankful for our sponsors, but this is one of those use cases where Revyz makes sense because the amount of time you're going to spend Googling trying to figure out where that damn import button is, not worth it. Okay, while Kari and everybody else goes out there and looks for it for us, we're going to continue because we got 19 minutes to finish this one up, and I'm getting hungry. All right, so project admins on the team managed side, project admins can control the workflow in their project. So you do not need a Jira admin. So you're able to do everything you can, or everything that Jira allows you, but there's certain things that you cannot do. So you cannot use the same workflow in multiple work items. You cannot use transition screens, and you can't use resolutions. Womp, womp, womp. So just know that that's there. All right. What have we learned? Oh, hopefully nothing. Where's the transition? So an action. There we go. This one. Next question. Raul's team wants to control their own workflow without involving a Jira admin. What type of project would this? Okay, so if this is the test, dude, I'm just going to go take it tomorrow. True or false? In a simplified workflow, you can move freely from any status to any status. Yes. Great work. Next lesson. Yay. All right. Create a basic workflow in Jira. By the end of this lesson, you're going to be able to differentiate workflow editors and create a workflow. So the workflow editors enable admins to create, move, reuse, and delete statuses and transitions for a workflow, as well as add conditions, validators, post functions, and transition screens. There are 3 kinds of workflow editors in Jira, because that's not confusing at all. Okay, Carol. So it says in Jira Cloud, you can't import workflows from anywhere other than the Elastic Marketplace. So then how am I supposed to export my workflow from the sandbox, and then upload it to some magical marketplace because it's proprietary data for my workflow, only to then download it and be able to import it from that said marketplace? Like, that doesn't make sense.
And they still let you export it. That's the thing. If they're going to remove the import, they need to remove the export functionality too.
Why do they have an export? Like, what is the value of the export then?
No one bothered to remove it yet. I think now that a couple of YouTubers have pointed it out, it may get removed in the next year.
Disappeared. We need to have a face-to-face with Dave Meyer here. Like, it needs to happen. We need to get this one scheduled.
But yeah, I call that a BS regression. That's the kind of thing that if I was in charge of the software team, would be filed as a bug. Atlassian probably considers it a feature.
We're going to open up a ticket, says Carol.
So can we figure out how long that Jack ticket will be alive? Will it be able to drink some one day?
20 years from now. Do you think there will be like 40, 50-year-old Jack tickets at one point?
Yeah, I am convinced there will be.
When I was a G.
Still gathering interest too.
I wish there was a way. Maybe that's something that we do. We should just go through all the Jack tickets and see which ones are gathering interest and just like get all of our subscribers to like one to just flood it. I don't think Atlassian is like designed to like take in an influx of information from an influencer network.
They're not.
Yeah, that'd be so cool. That'd be so cool. We like literally just pick up one day, like we just pick a Jack ticket and we have like everybody on LinkedIn and YouTube and all of our like, you know, followers. It's like just go hit the button and submit your interest. And I would be so curious to see what this poor Atlassian one is going to be like. There's an uptick in demand. Like, where did 1,000 people all of a sudden are interested in this one? That'd be cool. That'd be so funny. We could like instigate a change at Atlassian by literally staging a coup.
I mean, there's been some evidence that we've done it before.
Yeah, but it was very uncoordinated and very accidental. I'm like, what if we actually like try to do a revolution?
So field level security should be our first hit.
That's the first one. We should okay. So that sounds like a LinkedIn post we're gonna have to put. If you can change anything on Jira, what would it be? Maybe go back to the old UI. I wonder if there's a way to petition. Who would sign a petition to revert Jira back to the old UI? Because this new UI. Have you seen this, Rodney? Let me show you this. Let me show you a problem I'm having. I know a little sidebar, but we got 15 minutes and we're about to start a new module. So check this out. I am working on a sponsored video, not sponsored, but I'm in Elements copy, right? I'm trying to do a the use case that I'm working here is if you have a JSM ticket and you want to show up in Jira software because you want your your developers to work a JSM ticket. It's a couple of different ways to do it manually, even through automation rules, but this app will let me do what I need to do, right? So I'm in here and creating my recipes, doing what I got to do, doing all my stuff, right? So I won't bore you with the details, but I'm in here doing stuff. And then I got to a point where I needed to go to the settings of this app. And so now I have to go down to the bottom and like go to explore more apps to finally get to my apps here. Right. And so now then I got to find my app and I was doing some settings over here. Right. So I'm here. Now I'm still in the wrong place. I needed to be over here. Right. So to hit this button, sometimes it doesn't work. It doesn't go back. Like, let me try the workflow. I think it might be in the workflow. Like if I'm inside the project workflow and I'm configuring the workflow here, okay, and I go to like the permission scheme, maybe because I left. No, that doesn't make sense. I needed to do it where I wasn't. Let me edit the workflow here. I don't want to move to another tab here, right? So if I'm here and I want to go back to my project, I normally hit this button. Now it's working. Dang it! So, see, okay. So I went back and I'm on this page, but now if I hit this button, please don't work. Okay, there we go. That's the bug. See how I'm hitting the button to go back to projects, but it won't let me. So you will say, well, there's a switch settings. So I went to projects, but this takes you to the settings page for the project, not back to the project list. I want to see this list, but it wasn't taking me there. You see, so that's a bug that you have to skip through a couple of steps. The easiest way that I found was I was simply clicking back here and going back into Jira to get back in there. But yeah, Curry's had it where I had to go back to the project list and had to start all over again. It's super annoying. Like this new UI, I'm not liking it. So in the chat, who would be with me to sign a petition and revert us back?
I mean, I don't think it'll be a successful petition, but I'd be interested to see that movement.
All right, let's see if we can power through this one. It says 10 minutes, Rodney. Let's see. Focus. Can we get through this 10-minute module in 10 minutes?
I'm going to bet no, but I'm willing to try.
All right. All right. Workflow editors. Okay, there's 3 of them. I don't know why. We just need one. Right. So the new workflow editor combines all the workflow configurations into a simple view with a header and a bar on the side. We recommend you use this editor as it is the most streamlined editing and the most configurations in one place. But it's also the most confusing. I don't like this new one. Do you use the new one?
I do not.
I don't. I use the old workflow editor. This is my bread and butter. This is what I grew up with, and this is the one I used.
So the real question here is, do you use the diagram view or the list view?
I only use diagram view. I know you're a big fan of the list view. I don't know why. Something's wrong with you.
I won't say I'm a big fan of the list view per se. In certain circumstances, yes, it makes more sense. But that is only when I'm trying to find a specific transition on a specific status. Trying to go through and highlight all the lines and find a specific transition is nightmarish on the diagram view. Control F on the list view, especially if I already know what the transition's named, much easier.
Yeah, I like clicking around. And then there's a text flow editor, which is exactly what you're describing. My problem is here when you have too many transitions, like it gets really overwhelming with what the heck's happening and how do you fix the one you were looking for.
Again, this is where our different approaches come into play, where I like to name a transition after the destination status, and you like it to be some sort of verb. I'm not saying your approach is wrong. I'm just saying that can lead to some confusion.
All right, we're starting a revolution here. Sorry, not to detract, but old UI, keep the new font. I would say keep the new icons as well. Call it an upgrade, make pure money. Like this is the recipe for success.
45 seconds.
For what?
It took us 45 seconds to get distracted.
I wonder how many people come to for the distractions as opposed to the knowledge to go pass the test.
I think the distractions is part of the knowledge to go pass the test because it's the context, and that's really what you need to pass these exams is the context behind why this is the way it is. And even when it's like, look, this is what they will test, but this is what you should actually do based on experience.
Yeah, based on a lot of scars on our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, squirrel. All right. You can choose which workflow editor you use by either clicking on the switch editor or the more actions. And I'm still a fan of either this one or if you're crazy like Rodney, this one. But this new one, I don't like it. I'm not the biggest fan. I feel like I'm so muscle memory that even though everything's here that I need, it feels different and I don't like it. I like this one. All right, create workflow. So here's where you have some options. Okay. In most cases, you'll want to create a workflow by copying an existing workflow and customizing it. If there are workflows similar to what you need, then you will save time. When creating a new team managed project, you can still share all the settings with an existing project, including workflows, but you can't copy individual workflows within an existing team managed project. Well, okay. So to copy a workflow in a team managed project, you navigate to the request type, whose workflow you want to copy, click edit workflow, then more actions, copy to another request type. Let's test that out because this is not something I typically do. Folks, I don't spend a whole lot of time in team managed projects in case it wasn't obvious. Project settings. Boy, I'm getting very hungry. Work types, epic, edit workflow. Where's my copy button? That's what they said, right? Click edit workflow, then more actions. Where's the actions? Did I miss something? Let's try the task. Edit workflow. All right. Well, folks, if you're gonna put it in a document, it's gotta be there. Don't use team managed projects. trust. So here's my 2 cents on when you're taking the test. Do what they say here because that's what they're gonna test you on. Don't do on what reality is because they're not gonna test you on that.
Fair.
Carrie, are we saying your name right? Is it Carrie? Kari? Help us out here. I don't want to butcher your name every time. You seem like a pretty cool person that I don't want to be messing up their name.
But someone who I'm not going to name on this show or on the study session asked the CEO of Atlassian, why do team managed projects exist? And I agree with the principle and the idea. Do not agree with the execution.
It's Carrie. Okay, I like Carrie. We deter our users from team management. That would be a cool little thing. Maybe like if Atlassian, you know what? If Atlassian, no, you know what? For team managed projects, you can put your background, right? I would put like skulls and scary stuff to convince people to not use them. All right. On the in Jira administration on the sidebar, click on workflows next to any workflow, click on more actions and copy. So copying a workflow in a team managed project, in a company managed project is much easier. You go to your project. Here, you go to your project settings. I do it this way because then I guarantee that I'm going to be in the workflow that I need to be in. But you can't go to the gear, go to work types, and then do it. But you go to your workflows, and then you just go to actions and you copy. Now, pros and cons to copying or starting fresh, because there is an add a workflow where you create a new workflow. My pro, if I'm going to make a workflow for an existing project and I'm just going to break it up into like the task, right? If I'm separating this task from the bugs and there's a lot of overlap, I'm going to make a copy because then I'm just tweaking, right? I'm removing a couple statuses, I'm adding a couple statuses, and we're done. If you're like from the ground up architecting something new, I would just click create because then you got to delete so many things, right? And start all over. So that's my 2 cents. Make it make sense, but depends on how much. I would say gauge how much work you think you're going to need and then go from there. So creating a new workflow, I kind of just showed you, right? So you literally go to the gear, you go to workflows, you click on this button, and you're there. Yay. Reminder, if you go down this route, accommodate for your resolution not being set. You will have to set your resolution if you create a brand new workflow. That's another pro to why you would copy a workflow, because if you copy the workflow, then it's not a guarantee. It's not 100%, but you have a higher probability, especially if you don't fudge around with your done statuses, that your resolutions will be set. And look, you can also import workflows you exported from other sites or the Atlassian Marketplace. Fake news. Show us Atlassian. I wonder if it's in this video. You know what, Ronnie? Another LinkedIn post. We should add a LinkedIn post. Does anybody actually know how to import a workflow not from the marketplace? Because this statement here says that you can. So I'd be curious, does anybody actually know how to do this? I mean, obviously in this chat here, we exhausted it, but anybody outside, let's see. I'd be very curious. All right, configuring your workflows.
Post.
Editing statuses. So this right here is fireable offense numero uno. So basic workflows usually have 3 or 4 statuses: to do, in progress, review, and done. Admins can add new statuses while configuring. All right. So to add it, so to edit a status in the new workflow, click on status. In the side panel, you can change the name, category, properties. Never, ever, ever, ever do this. Never do what Atlassian just told you to do. Never open up a status, never click on the status, never click on edit, and never rename that. If you do this, even though this workflow is applied to just one project, you will remove backlog from everybody. All backlog statuses across all the projects in your instance will be impacted. Never, ever, ever rename a status unless you want to get fired by me.
Yeah, this was what I was alluding to earlier. Alex has like 3 or 4 things that if you do in Jira and you're his employee, you're no longer his employee. This is one of them.
Always make a new status, swap things out, delete the old, or remove the old status, but never rename it. The only time I am comfortable with renaming a status is if I go Rod's status, right? And I click on add and I just make a status, right? I just made it. It's in a workflow that hasn't been published. It is safe. I will edit this right now. And that's the only time that I will edit a workflow, because a status, because I know that it hasn't been used by anybody. It's still in development. But once you publish that workflow, you got to make a new status and swap them out, because you're just going to create all kinds of problems.
And then you need to repeat this around 1,100 times and then give your instance over to Greg.
Yeah. And then Greg's like, that's why we ended up with 1,100 statuses. All right. What did Susan say? Carrie, I wish I could. We're on standard, no sandbox. Oh. Train on sandbox. So Carrie or Susan, one little pro tip: Jira is free, right? Jira is free, and so you can't go create your own Jira and then make your changes over there. Screw that Jira up. and then
burn it down, create a
burn
new
it down.
one.
And, yeah. You don't need to have a sandbox, but you can create another Jira. All right. Adding the status, though, very similar. You just literally saw me add Rod status, so that one's good. Editing transitions. This one I'm more okay. You can edit transitions. You're not going to get fired. But just renaming things in Jira is usually not a good idea. Okay. Let's see what we learned. Oh, Ronnie, we might actually be able to make it. So which workflow editor does Atlassian recommend? The new one. Duh.
But that's wrong.
Kazo is a team management project. How can he configure workflows? He can copy workflows from no. Yes. No.
I think it might be 3.
He can configure. Is a team managed software project admin. How can he configure workflows? I want to say it's the last one. He can modify individual workflows in his team managed project. Because I know he can copy, but the rule wasn't very clear up here. I kind of read real past it real fast. When creating a new team managed project, you can share all the settings with an existing project, including workflows, but you can't copy individual workflows. What does that even mean? I'm going to go with the last one.
I think the last one based on that.
Okay. Okay, cool. So we finished that one, and we're right at time. We only went over by a minute, and we actually finished a 10-minute section in 13 minutes. Look at that, world record.
Only 3 squirrels.
Now, I don't know how the heck we ended up going from creating basic to automation rules. I'm pretty sure we're going to want to do create complex workflows next.
Yeah.
So make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you go check out Revyz, and we will see you back on Tuesday next week. Although we're going to have to put this into high gear, Ronnie. At this rate, we're going to finish by Christmas.
If we could finish before October, that's my goal. Because I want to get this one at Barcelona.
I'm trying to do this over Memorial Day weekend, so we might have to Leroy Jenkins this one.
Hey, I did it with the 120 last year at Barcelona.
All right. Thank you, Susan, Carrie, Greg, everybody else that commented. Thank you so much. We appreciate you being here. And
don't forget to like, subscribe, do all the YouTuber things, help us out.
Yep.
And share this with someone who needs to learn something.
Ooh, Greg's taking his exam next Friday, so he's Leroy Jenkins in it. Should be fun, Greg. It sounds like you know what you're doing. We don't.
Yep. We're learning.
We're just kidding. We know exactly what we're doing. All right. Again, special thank you to Revyz for making this entire series possible. So check them out. Bye.